Welcome to episode 3 of Mindset Matters. Today we're going to talk about something that I've talked about in quite a lot of videos, and that is feeling ugly and what you can do about it. And I'm going to share some of my own experiences and things like that. So I know a lot of times we have this internal feeling that we're ugly. Maybe you've had some negative experiences in your childhood. Maybe you've been told that you're ugly. Maybe you just don't feel very attractive and you have this mindset. You have this thought in your head that you're really ugly. And because of that, you keep thinking nobody likes you. Nobody's gonna want to talk to you and everything like that. I should really say my point of view. So it's like you're thinking, why would someone want to talk to this ugly shit fuck, right? That's how I think a lot of times in the past. So I'm just like, who would want to talk to me because I'm ugly? Like, what's going on? Like, why would anyone want to spend time with an ugly freak, right? Okay, let me get back into the reason why I felt ugly, and let's touch more on like some of the reasons, because sometimes I feel like everyone has different reasons for feeling ugly. For me, personally, it's a very specific reason why I felt ugly. And I actually can prove a point later on with my reasoning even, so I'm going to be quite excited to get into that. But one thing I do want to remind you is a lot of times when you make up your mind that you feel like, oh, you think you're ugly, you're going to try to project your own belief onto other people. So you're going to be like, oh, everyone else is going to think I'm really ugly because that's what I think. But what you don't realize is that's not what a lot of people think. I mean, like, there are people who I'm looking at, and like, I don't think I've ever actually just looked at people and thought, oh, this person's ugly. Oh, that person's ugly. Oh, this person's ugly. I don't really do that. I'm thinking about, oh my God, what are they going to think about me, right? So you have to sometimes think of it from an outside point of view. You have to really think of it from, like, you're looking at yourself from the outside rather than you looking outside, if that even makes sense. I don't know if that made sense, but anyway, you know what I mean. Sometimes you have to think of it like you're another person looking in from the outside at you from the outside. I've said outside too many times. Anyway, and my glasses are super slippery today. I have to apologize for that because I'm sweating a bit. It's actually really hot today, so that's why it's falling down a little more than often. Little more than usual, so I have to apologize for that. I know how annoying it can be, but yeah. Maybe if I just, wipe the frickin' thing a bit, maybe that'll actually help. Who knows? Anyway, let's get back into these ugly talk. I personally dealt with feeling ugly for a very specific purpose. Growing up, I've had a very abusive biological father who I hate that I feel like I've had some of his traits, physical traits, got kind of passed on to me. And because he's such a nasty person, I always thought he was like the ugliest person in the world. But in reality, when you think about that, he's really not physically too unattractive if you just look at him from afar. He's just like every other person, right? But to me, he is like ugly as fuck because he is such a nasty person. He was very abusive. He was just very nasty. He was very angry all the time and just basically was not a very nice person. Because of that, I never liked him. So when you see like parts of him in yourself, especially like traits that like just reminds you of him, like, for example, for me, it's always been my nose that kind of looked a lot like his. And for some reason, like, that creates this disgust in me. I'm just like, oh, that is the most horrible feature I could ever imagine. Oh my God, because of that, I feel like the ugliest freak in the world. And honestly, the funny thing is, growing up, I've had a lot of people tell me that I'm not ugly, that I'm very beautiful, that I'm good looking and stuff like that. And for all of that time growing up, I thought they were crazy. I just thought, like, what do you know? Like, you're obviously drinking something if you think I'm beautiful. Like, there's no way. Because in my mind, my thought was that, oh, I looked like him. He's ugly, therefore I'm ugly. Well, for other people, it could be a different reason. It could just be that, you know, it could be some other reason why you feel ugly. I mean, like, not everyone has my experience, so yeah. This is just one person's experience with feeling ugly. So I'm just like thinking, like, that person's not exactly in their right mind if they think I'm pretty. What do they know? Like, they don't know anything. That's what I think. And no matter what they said, no matter what they try to convince me, it never actually convinced me that I was any kind of good looking at all. Like, I just never believed them, because to me, I was just not, like, I had my own firm beliefs, and nothing in the world could change that. It's a good thing in a way when you have a firm belief. You can actually use it to your advantage if you can figure out how to harness it correctly. Yes, if you can actually develop some kind of positive image of yourself, like somehow, if you can manage to do that, you can really harness that self-belief thing, and people's negative thoughts on you is not going to change much if you have your firm belief that you're not ugly. So how do we do that when all your life you felt ugly because of some reason? Maybe it could be someone close to you have called you ugly because, like, I don't know, like sometimes people might just call other people ugly. I mean, I remember when I was, let's say, early teenager, I was like having those dreams like every other teenager this year. I was like, I'm going to be an actress. Oh, yes. So I was like looking at all these like plays. I was reading these plays in my bedroom and just like, you know, practicing. It's because my mum told me, oh, you know what, if you like making videos, because you know I like making videos and stuff, or sort of similar to that. She's like, you should be a news anchor. And then I was like, why should I be a news anchor? I want to be an actress. Because we all like those type of things more when you're a kid, right? And then she's like, oh, really? You're gonna, you know, you don't, you're, at the most, you're gonna look like your aunt. I'm actually not sure if that's like an insult to my aunt, but anyway. Basically she was just saying, you don't look enough. Well, I appreciate she was trying to, you know, talk me out of it, because she probably thought it was way too hard to be an actress. But still, those kind of comments do kind of make you feel like, oh, I'm just like not good looking, so I can't do much. And while acting is very hard to get into, well, you know, back then, of course, like now still, but that doesn't mean you just can't do anything because you're ugly. Seriously, like, I mean, like, it's not even really like who's to decide who's ugly, because I'll always remember that one time. It's crazy that actually I was watching a show. We had a roommate that was living with us at the time. I was watching a show, and there was a character in there that I thought was like, oh my God, I seriously thought she was like one of the most beautiful, like, her face just looked super beautiful. Anyway, so the roommate was watching it with me, and he was like, oh, shit. And then he was like, she's nowhere near as good looking as the other one. And I was just like, what? How? Like, not that I thought the other person in there was ugly, but I just couldn't understand why he didn't think that the person I thought was really beautiful was not, like, I just couldn't understand why he didn't think that. So it really goes to prove that everyone has different ideas of what ugly is. A lot of times, someone might just be influenced by their previous experiences. Because you know what happened? Because of my biological father, you can thank him for this freaking thing, that, like, I find when I'm watching a show, if for some reason a character or an actor or someone in the show kind of somehow reminds me of him, then I have this like almost like an automatic dislike for that. It's like, oh my God, it's like my mind is like, that's a threat. That person's a threat. So you can't like the way that person looks. You're gonna have to like remember what that person looks like, all those little details about the features of that person, and remember it and hate it. That's what my mind is telling me. So I find myself like unfairly disliking certain characters on shows because the way they talk sometimes just kind of reminded me of him. I noticed that in a few shows, and I was like, why am I feeling so negative about this person? Like, I shouldn't be, because they're not the same person. It's just that they reminded me of somehow. Like, maybe it was just, like, certain features. Sometimes, like, you see certain features that look similar to other people, so you kind of get reminded. So a lot of times our perception of ugliness is very warped. So I would suggest, if you feel like you're really ugly, you have to realize that that's not what everyone thinks. And you cannot just project your own belief that, oh, I'm ugly, I think I'm ugly, therefore everyone has to think I'm ugly. Because that's kind of not fair if you think about it. Because if you have to think about this, you're going outside, right? You're looking at people, and imagine if you saw someone and you thought they looked nice. Like, it couldn't, maybe it's not like, oh, like a super beauty, but you just thought, yeah, they look like good. And then that person's like, I'm ugly. You can't tell me otherwise. And then you're thinking like, but that's my thought. I don't really think you're ugly. I think you're fine. Like, I think you look nice. Imagine if that person just couldn't accept what you thought and just put their belief onto you. Imagine how that'll make you feel. Because a lot of times I know that I'll think someone looks nice, I think someone looks good, but they just think, oh no, you don't know anything. Yeah, I'm horribly ugly. Like, what do you know? And that kind of almost like makes me feel a little like annoyed, because I'm just like, why can't I have my own thoughts? Stop telling me what I'm thinking. Like, I don't think this. But anyway, I understand why they do that, but still, this is just a little suggestion. So like, if you're feeling really ugly, you have to realize, you really do have to realize that that is not what everyone else is thinking, because everyone has different experiences. They didn't have the same experience as you. They're not going to find the same traits ugly. They're not going to think certain things ugly that you do. So of course it's going to be different for everyone. And of course, you know, there is like, I would say maybe like 10% of the population that I would call super beauties. Like they got the perfect face, and I'm just like looking at it with utter jealousy, thinking like, oh, if only I had 1% of that look, oh my god, then I could do anything, right? We've all seen people like that, and that's like, it's just like so funny that when we see people like that, we often just feel like envious. It's like, oh, if only I had that kind of feature, oh, you know. But you really don't know what they're struggling with. So you know what, what's really interesting is, years ago when I had roommates, I just remember I thought like, oh, they look so cool and everything. Like, I don't remember what the conversation was, but they just started saying they were fat. And then I was just looking at them like, but they're skinny. Like, they're not. Like, I couldn't understand why they were thinking that. So a lot of times, like, I feel like we just have such high expectations of ourselves, because it's to our mind. It's such a threat for people to dislike us. So we're always trying to find ways to like protect ourselves, and like, you know, we just don't want to get in a situation where people might dislike us. But one of the most important things that throughout all my years, I sound like I'm like, throughout all my years of doing certain thing. It's like, oh yes. Throughout all my years, I actually learned something very, very important. And that is, I think about the things that I like, and I think of the things that I dislike. I think of names that I like. I think of people that I really like. And I think of, this is very, very important, and I want you to really think about this. Like, take a minute to really think about this. Maybe even write it down if that helps you to like clarify your thoughts better. What I really want you to do is write down at least 5 people, or think it in your head, that matter to you more than life itself. I want you to think about the 5 people that matter so much to you that you would do anything for them. Like, really think about the 5 people. You don't have to tell me what it is. I mean, silly me, you can't really tell me what it is as I'm talking to a camera, if you know what I mean. But just think about who they are, and I want you to write down the reason why they matter to you. I really do want you to write down the reason why this particular person mattered to you more than life itself. What I want you to write is, why do they matter or mean so much to you? I can think of 5 people. I can think of 5 very special people like that very easily. And I can tell you exactly why they matter to me as much as they do. Well, number one, I will just talk about one person because that one person is my grandfather. He is the single person in life that I always looked up to. I love with all my heart. And guess what? When I knew him, he was like 70 years old. Actually, I don't remember. Maybe younger, maybe older. I have no idea. It's not like he looked a certain way. It's not like he had certain features. My grandfather was nice to me. He was kind to me. He was just he was kind to me. That was the reason why I like him. And I think of that as an example for almost everything. The most important person in my life is my grandfather because he was kind to me. And then when I think of that, the other 4 people that matter to me, it's because they've encouraged me. If it's because they helped me in some ways, they like believed in me, or they did something nice for me to make me believe in myself. Every single one of those person has done something that made me feel really warm and very good. Why I like them has absolutely nothing to do with the way they look. If anything, the way they treated me made them look, in my eyes, made them look like they were the best looking person. I don't mean that in a attractive in them, I just mean that to me, the features of that makes me feel like happiness, or just positive is what I should say. There's nothing to do with like being attracted to the opposite gender, whatever it is. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like just an overwhelming positive feeling towards that person. Like you think about that person that really matters to you, and you think of and when you think of them, everything about them brings you some kind of positive feeling, right? So when you think about those 5 people, you probably are going to like their accent, their the way they speak. You'll probably like their voice. You probably like their name. You'll probably like where they live. All these things about them are going to be such an important trait that you're going to love because they are them and they did something for you. Because I know in the past, like anything related to my biological father, like it could be the accent that he had, it could be like the place he was born, or that I hated it. I was like, oh my God, I hate all the freaking accents the same. And I know it's not fair for me to dislike something just because of one person, but I couldn't help it. My mind just went there. Like it was just warning me. It feels like my mind is warning me of the dangers. So it's like you have to like dislike everything about him. And then when I think about my grandfather, his accent, oh my God, like every single time I even hear any accent that was similar to his, I would just feel like, oh my God, it's like the greatest accent. And for same with people who treated me really well, I love their voice. I think like their voice is like the most wonderful sounding thing in the entire universe. That's exactly, like, I just love everything about them. So my point with sharing this is something very important. How one person makes another feel is far more important than how they actually look. Because there's never been a single circumstance I've ever disliked or liked a person more because of the way they look. Of course, there's going to be some things, as I always say, there's going to be some things that might make someone more or less attractive. Like weight, for example. Like you might think more negatively if someone is like really, really overweight or obese or something like that. But let's just talk more about like certain traits that one might find ugly. So we're not going to go to the weight thing because that's just like a whole separate thing. What I find is that so many times we just have this belief that because we are ugly, or because we think we're ugly, other people are going to think that too. And then it's going to cause people not to like us. I mean, in the past, I remember like whenever there was like a group situation where there was more than one person talking, I never felt like I was able to get any words in because I felt like I'm not interesting enough for anyone to listen to me. So I'd rather just not speak. I would just kind of be completely silent. I would just be like sitting there, like not saying anything because I thought that I didn't have anything to add because I felt like I was so ugly that people wouldn't want to hear what I have to say. But what I didn't realize was my like thought of the fact that I was ugly and me having kind of almost like having a distance. It's like me kind of almost like when I feel like, oh, that person must not like me. There's like, you're building some kind of distance between them and they can feel it. I guarantee you they can feel it when you kind of have some kind of distance against the other. Oh God, there's like, they can probably feel it and they will kind of react back in more of a, oh, I'm going to keep some distance from you too. So that's how a lot of times you'll find that the other person seem to not be too open to you because maybe they felt that little bit of a distant thing too. And then they're like, okay, if that person's not open to me, I'm not going to be open to them. So end up with two people who don't really know each other, who just feel distant from each other. And that's a lot of times what ends up happening. And that's a lot of times happened when I used to be in more of a group situation. There'd be like people talking and there's always some people who are really, really great with conversation. They'll just be able to say whatever they want and oh my God, the conversation just go on and they'd be sharing all these things and I'm sitting there just being completely silent, like, yeah, like completely silent. And most of the times people don't really ask me things or talk to me at all. And then guess what happens? My mind, and I'm thinking like, oh, like they're not talking to me. I must have some issue. Like they must think they must have some issue with me. So I'm not gonna like say anything. They must hate me. And then you just build up this long story about what they think. When a lot of times they're probably thinking like, oh, what's wrong with why they like not like me or something? You know, maybe they're thinking the same thing as you do. You never know. You never know what people are thinking. So we can't just force our own mind or like mindset or thoughts into what they think and think that I'm sorry about the lighting, there's sun coming in and out, so sometimes it's brighter than other times. But anyway, so another example I do want to give is the shows, because I watch a lot of shows, and when I watch a lot of shows I also get to know a lot of different characters and stuff, and I always find the characters really make me realize more about life, because it's just so interesting the way we feel about certain characters. So there are a lot of times I'll start watching a show and I'd be like, I completely don't think too much about it. Like sometimes I like to watch shows with the same actors because I feel like I know them. So, and when I don't know them, sometimes I have a very neutral feeling about them. And of course there's going to be some actors that are so damn perfect looking, like completely like perfect features, like what's that word where like the two side of your face is the same? Like the symmetry. Yes, when someone's face is completely symmetrical or whatever you call it, yes, that can add to someone's attractiveness and like, you know. But what ends up happening a lot of the times is when there's a character who is a really good person, I end up really liking that character so much, like, and that kind of almost is like, I like the actor because of the character. And it's hard for me sometimes to separate the two. Although a lot of people can, I find it very hard because I'll be a big fan of an actor because they played a role that I really like, you know. So, but what I noticed is in the beginning, when I watched the show, I had a very neutral feeling about them. But how they were as a character in the show usually made me either really love them or just feel more neutral. So, and a lot of times when the character is such a good person and like they're just a really, really good person and giving and just very nice and everything, I really like the character. I really do. And I find that I just want to like learn traits from, and it's like, oh, I'm just thinking of all these positive things. It's usually because the character had personality that was really great. That's usually the biggest reason why I will like a character, rather than, oh, I just like the character because they looked the best, or they had the best hair or makeup or whatever. Like, that's really not something I'm actively thinking about. And that brings me to what I feel like is happening with a lot of people. And that is, a lot of times I feel like we are not telling our stories, we're not sharing things, or we're too scared to be on camera, or we're too afraid to reveal our voice, or whatever it is that you're too afraid of because you feel like you're too ugly. A lot of times, I know in the past, I've suffered from that too. Like, for years, I put off making videos because I was like, oh, I'm too ugly. I don't have perfect looking features. I don't want to make videos because I don't look good enough. That was my mindset for about 10 or 15 or 20 years. And that's why I put off making videos for that long. I could have been like saying this stuff like 20 years ago. Well, that wouldn't work because I didn't have the mindset that I have now 20 years ago. I kind of slowly built to where I am now. But still, if I didn't think too much about my looks, I could have really started just sharing my story and what I've learned and everything, bringing value to people so much earlier than what I have. And you can't get the time back. So the more you dwell on it, like thinking, oh, I'm just too ugly to do this, the longer you're going to waste, the more time you're going to waste. And the later on, you're going to come back and think like, oh God, look at all this time. I could have been doing something all this time. But instead, what ends up happening a lot of times is that you waste time living someone else's life, or you like live vicariously through other people. Maybe you just watch someone else's living their life all day while you just feel like, oh, I'm just escaping. Maybe you just like spend hours and hours just watching movies or shows or whatever. That always happens. Like, a lot of times you'll find that that is the perfect escape, by just consuming after consuming. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, and I still love watching things, but what I will do now is I'm going to actually give myself a lot of time in the day to create things, and not just think, oh, I'm gonna like live through other people and then like not even spend any time. And that's how I lived even last year. I think I spent most of my day wasting it away. What I mean by wasting it away is really just doing things that's not contributing to my dreams and what I really want to achieve in life. Basically just kind of doing things like watching videos all day or something, like, I don't know, just going and just looking at things. And nowadays what I find is I have a lot more motivation because I know that what I have to say is a lot more important than how I look. So I'm no longer absolutely like, pressured to show up looking perfect. I know in the past I've had moments where I had really bad pimple breakouts, and because of that, I would be like, oh God, there's no way I can show up on camera if I have pimples, or what are people gonna think? I mean, of course, there's gonna be some people who will say like, oh, like, look at your ugly pimples, like, oh, terrible. And yeah, even I agree with that, you know, it's like, but still, I actually, right now, what I love is being able to show up imperfect as well. So that doesn't mean that I'm against makeup or against like looking nice. So like, don't think that. I think you should do whatever that makes you happy. But I also think it is not a problem if one day you just don't feel as nice, or you're not feeling the best, and you still should be able to show up. Like, I don't put on makeup a lot of the times because I'm lazy, not because I just don't enjoy it. I'm just lazy. I'm like, I don't have time for this, and I'm not that good at it. One day I would love to like figure it out, you know, that'd be fun. But like before, I just felt like, oh, because I didn't look good enough, I shouldn't even be on video at all. What I didn't realize was I'm letting what I have to say slip by and wasting the time I could have like actually made some kind of impact on someone. But instead I just let my insecurity completely overwhelm me. So I didn't do the things that I really wanted to. I spent like 3 years overthinking my pimples and looks and not do what I really wanted to because I was so afraid. For what exactly? Like, you have to think about it. For what? For the few people who do say you're ugly, I know that in the past, I would have been really affected by it. Like, in the past, I know, like, that comment would have been like, oh my God, see, there's proof. There we go. Nowadays, I do actually just feel very compassionate for the person. I really do. I feel like it's sad that people will feel that way about anyone. Like, you know, it's like I will just really try to get deep into like the philosophies and stuff. So nowadays, I think very differently from how I used to be. I used to be so bad at taking like things that you should have seen me. I was horrible. Like I'm actually not proud of how I used to be. It's like, God, thank God, like all the stuff that I used to like say is, yeah, let's just not even go there. Oh my God, but it's very embarrassing. But anyway, still, I just love being able to realize this because I just know how many people are crippled in fear because they feel like they're too ugly. And what I have to say is, all the people that are most important to me didn't get to that place in my heart being the most important by being nice looking or good looking. They did it by being very, very nice to me. They cared about me first. They really, really did something that showed that they somehow cared about me. And because of that, I just felt like, I just felt so good because of it, because they made me feel like I was worth something. And that's what is so important. You have to remember that if you in any sort of way can make someone else feel that way about themselves, I bet you that you're going to be their hero. You're going to be like the most important person to them if you can make them feel good about themselves. And the first thing you have to realize is that it's okay to be imperfect, because a lot of times we just have this idea that we have to show up absolutely perfect. We have to look right. Otherwise, people are going to say stuff. But what we don't realize is people could say stuff even if you show up perfect. You know, people could complain that you're too perfect. That's something that happens too. A lot of times you hear people complain about fictional characters that are too perfect. I never actually really understood that because I don't read a lot of fiction books and stuff. But I just remember one time, like, people were just having this big discussion about how they hated this particular character because she was too perfect. That was like the reason why people hated her. And I was just thinking, trying to figure out what about her that was too perfect that people hated. I was really trying to get down to the psychology of like what they hated. And from what I really realize is when someone is perfect with everything, they're too good, they're too perfect, then people just don't seem to find them relatable. That's a very important lesson for me, is that when you show up imperfect, people will relate to that a lot more. If I hear people talk about the things that they struggle with, I hear people talk about, like, you know, things like that, I will feel like, oh wow, like there are some times where I'll be like, oh my God, I have the exact same experience. How crazy. Oh my God. And suddenly you feel like they're your best friend and you can relate. You just want to write to them and tell them stuff. Oh my God. Like, you know, I've had that moment too. Like there's this one person that I never really like watched a lot of videos or something, and then one time that person just showed a bit of their struggles with self-image or perfectionism and everything, and suddenly I just feel like, oh my God, I feel like I know the person. Oh my God, they're sharing something like this. Oh my God. And I just like have so many oh my God. Like I'm just like, oh my God. Like, just too many oh my Gods. I'm just like, I relate to you. I feel like I know you. I get really excited when things like that happen. So to anyone who just feels like you're not good enough for anything, please don't think that. I really want you to go out and do that thing that you really want to do. And sometimes you might just be putting it off because you're coming up with a lot of excuses. I know when you're afraid of doing something, it's going to be very hard for you to actually do it, even though the answer to how to start or how to do things could just be a Google search away. I mean, how many times have we put off doing something because we tell ourselves, it's too hard, oh, we're too ugly, oh, this is like impossible to do, oh, this and that. We have a bunch of excuses. But in reality, or we're saying like, we don't know how, oh, it's too hard, like there's too many steps involved, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, I don't know what to use, or what, I don't know what service is the best, or like, you know, we come up with all these excuses. But when you like get rid of all the layers, the real reason, or the real like the real reason why you're putting it off is obviously a lot of times to do with You're afraid. You're afraid of people saying things. You're afraid of people being mean. You're afraid of all this stuff, and that's stopping you. And I just want to really, really say that every minute that you're not doing something, you're like, that minute is lost forever. Like, what if one day you realize this and then you're like looking back and you wish you could get all the minutes back, but you're not going to be able to, because when time is gone, time is gone. Like, I do think that time is the absolute most precious asset that anyone could have. Once that time is gone, it's gone. And if you can spend even 1 hour to work on something that you really want to, just truly work on it, like I am now, because right now I'm really working hard on my podcast and everything, and I'm like doing all these things. I feel like I'm doing something. I feel like I'm not wasting time. I'm not just living vicariously through others. And while it's nice to relax and watch other people's videos and stuff, and I love doing that, but I still feel like you need to at least give yourself more time to work on the things that you really want to, because you don't want to come back in 10 years time and think, what did I do with all my time? I wasted all. Like, you could often you could even multitask. That's the cool thing, is that a lot of times I can be listening to something and doing something else. Like, I'd be writing something. And that's one thing that I started doing recently, was I started writing my story. And that's something that I kind of thought of before, but I always got put off by how hard it was. I was just like, oh, I like, it's kind of similar to that negative self voice that a lot of times we have when we don't feel good enough or confident enough, or that we feel ugly, is that we think, oh, what do we have to say that's not already said, or what do we have to add that's not already out there? There are people who are so much better than me. Why should I even bother? Right? That's what we're thinking. We're thinking, why should we add anything? Because what you don't realize is your story is not the same as anyone else's. Just like you're going to be the only person in the world that looks like who you are. And I see it now, I see it as a positive, because you can make such a difference in the world. You can really do that. You don't have to just sit back and let everyone, just live through other people. You can actually be that person to make a difference. And I truly believe that, because I used to be the same. I used to just waste my time away. I would just be watching my favorite vloggers living their life while I felt jealous and envious and like, oh, if only I could do that. And that made me feel very unhappy. Now, what I love doing is I still love to watch these same people, but I'm feeling so happy for them. It's like, oh my God, it's like a genuine happiness. Like, oh wow, like I'm able to do what I love too. It's like, so you gotta actually just allow yourself to do what you really want to do, and don't let that fear of you being ugly stop you, because as I said, people who are going to say that you're ugly, I bet you that they're not very happy to say that. Or maybe they want to see how you react to it. It doesn't really, like I know I don't, I'm definitely not the type of person to go out and like look at people and rank them from 1 to 10 in terms of attractiveness, thinking like, oh, that person's not as ugly. Oh, this one's better looking. Oh, today I saw 10 people on the street and this one is the most beautiful. And I secretly take a photo and like, this one's the most beautiful. This one's the second best. This one's the third. Like, imagine if I wasted my time doing that. Like, imagine if I did that. That's just the most craziest thing I've ever thought of. Like, I can't even believe my imagination can come up with some crap like that. But like, we're not doing that. If someone is saying you're ugly, maybe they're unhappy. And sometimes when you're so unhappy and you feel so horrible, calling other people ugly may be a way that it helps them feel like not as crap. I don't know. But I just know that when I was so unhappy and I was feeling really, really jealous. When I felt jealous, I just didn't feel happy, and I wanted to I just didn't feel nice. But when you're really happy, you're doing the things you love, you just want to be happy for people. So that's what I want you to remember, is don't take it personally, because a lot of times people, they don't know you, and it doesn't really matter. Like, and one thing that I do want to also mention is that sometimes it's okay to be ugly sometimes. Like, there are days that now it's like, it's crazy that my views on myself have changed quite a lot. Although it's not as where I want it to be, but it's still a lot better than it was. So nowadays, because I watch a lot of my own videos back, I'm starting to get to know myself in a way that I didn't before. So before, like, what happens is I have this mental image of how I look when I talk. So a lot of times I'll just be automatically feeling like, oh, I must be ugly when I say this or that. Like, oh, with the way I talk, I must be really ugly. So I have this like conception that, oh my God, I'm just too ugly for this or that. Nowadays, because I watch a lot of my videos, there are actually, crazily, there are days that I don't look very ugly at all. I'm like, oh my God, I actually look pretty good some days. I'm serious. Like, there are some days I'm looking at my video like, wow, and no wonder some people said I don't look ugly. Like, I agree with that. And I'm just like, I can't believe I actually think that now. That's because I actually get to see how I look and stuff. And sometimes just me being very happy and, you know, cheerful, like watching those videos back will make me laugh. And, you know, it's really wonderful that way. But other times I'll be like, you know, having a bad hair day. Like, sometimes I'll be having a really bad hair day, really bad breakout, everything. And I'll be like, ugh. And that's okay. You know what? It's okay. I don't think it's a problem that sometimes we're just not as attractive as other days. You know, it's like life. As you get older, you're going to find that, you know, things are up and down. But who's to say that just because you reach an age that you don't look good or stuff? I still think some really cool people, like, I think people look amazing no matter what age they are. Like, they look great if they bring some kind of value, then oh my God, they look great. And they just have some kind of, like, you just feel some kind of positive vibe when you hear them. Like, that's how I feel with people that that has made a huge difference to me, is that the first thing is that I absolutely think that they look great. And I don't mean that, as I said before, I don't mean that in any kind of like inappropriate way. I just think that they look great, as in when I see them, I'm like, this person looks great. I feel so positive when I see them. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is I'm thinking like, oh my God, I like the way they sound. I like the way they talk. I like when the way, like the kind of emphasis they use on their sentences. You'll start picking little things about things you like about the way they talk even. That's what I've noticed, is that I really start to point out like, oh my God, I love the way they say this. Like, oh wow, I'm gonna like start talking like them now. That's what I find that happens, is like when I really admire someone, like because they've done something good for me, I find myself like even trying to imitate them because I really just like them that much. Like, they just done so much good for me that I want to talk like them. I want to be like them, even though I know it's like, no, I shouldn't be like someone else. Just be you. But I do I find that they inspire me sometimes. Like, I'll pick up a lot of things from them if I really, really think like they done something great for me. And that's just so important because, as I said, what you have to say is a lot more important than how you look. So if you've ever been afraid to make videos because you don't think you look good enough, I understand. I can relate. But also, I feel like it's something that you can work through. It's not something that, like, you could say, like, oh, easy for you to say, you don't look like as bad as me. Like, honestly, my own image of myself was as bad as anyone who felt ugly about themselves would think. Believe you me, I really did feel like I was the ugliest person on earth. Like, I was not joking. Even though a lot of people didn't agree with that, I still did think that because of my experiences. So, and I feel like a lot of times you just have to also get used to a little bit more of how, like, the way you're sounding and everything, or the way you look, because a lot of times you find that you don't truly know yourself the way other people know you. And what I mean by that is other people see you all the time. They see your face, they see your expressions, they see the way you talk when you're smiling, they see every little expression of yours, but you don't see that. The only time you see yourself is when you look in the mirror or you're looking, and then like, and a lot of times you're looking in the mirror and you have that like either blank expression or like you're not like talking on, like it's not like you get in the mirror and go like, so you don't really know how you look anyway. So who's to say that you're not going to like the way you look when you get used to it more? Because a lot of times I find that the more I expose myself to my own videos, the more I watch myself, the more I'm open to how I look, the more I'm thinking like, oh, it's not so bad after all. Like, oh, why did I think I looked this bad when I obviously didn't? So a lot of times you just have to also expose yourself. Just expose yourself to watching yourself, and then you'll soon like start to know yourself in a brand new light. You're going to actually know the way you look. When you're saying certain things, there might be moments that you'll just think, oh, that one looks really bad, but that's okay. It's all the things that we learn and every single day. So beauty is such a thing that everyone has different views on it. Everyone's going to feel differently. A lot of times it has to do with their own past history, their experiences in life, is going to make them think certain things are more attractive or less attractive. And you don't have to please everyone. You don't have to make everyone like you for the way you look. Just do your best and say what you want to say. Say the things that you want, do the things that you really do, and just don't worry about pleasing everyone, because you're not going to be able to do that. It's okay. It's good enough that some people might find you so relatable. Like I find that even if it's one person, even if it's just one person, then I feel like I've done a good job. I don't want to have everyone think I'm like the best looking person. Like that's just so weird to me. But yeah, it's fine. Like I never feel like I need to show up perfect these days, because I just really see amazing things happen when you show up imperfect. I'm gonna give another example for a video that I saw recently, and I was very interested in the video, so I went and had a look, and there were two people in the video. They were so positive and happy, and they were just living their life and sharing things, but they were doing it with a smile. And it was like a 20-minute video, and I just remember watching the video with the biggest smile on my face, because they just made me feel so good and happy because of the way they had such a positive outlook, and just they were so happy, and they were sharing things they loved, and it was amazing. And you know what the craziest thing is? I had a look at the comments, and people were just really like, they're saying how much like that their positive energy was just so wonderful and everything. And oh my god, it was like overwhelmingly positive as well. And I just couldn't help but remember just how happy I felt when I was watching that video. I was watching it with such a big smile on my face. Like you couldn't even imagine. I was just like, like, like a silly person smiling like a silly idiot. Like, oh god, that's so sweet. And it just made me realize that I've seen similar videos of people making similar content, but they're complaining and stuff. And then when I look at the comments, people were just like, oh, you should do that. Like very, very angry, kind of annoyed. It's just so different. So I truly believe in like spreading that positive energy. I cannot emphasize that enough. Like a lot of times we don't have to focus so much about our looks, but the positive energy that we emit, I feel so like fancy saying that, like, is so much more important than how you're looking on that day. I truly believe that, because some days, the craziest thing is I started watching my own videos, right? So a few weeks ago, ever since I started doing those like vlogs, so sometimes I'll just watch them back, and I notice that sometimes like the kind of conversations we have are just so wacky and really crazy and funny that I find myself, after I watch it, I'm in a really good mood, and I'm just like, ha ha ha, I'm laughing about it, right? Because it's like so ridiculously silly that we're conversing about these things. And then I'm just thinking, like, maybe someone else will feel this happy when they watch it. And maybe because of that, that's good enough of a reason to film it. Even though some days in the videos of those vlogs, I'm looking like trash. Like, I'm like, oh god, like, too long of a nose hair. Sometimes I'd be thinking that. Or, oh, like, my face looks a bit too wide. Just sort of little things that you pick out on yourself. But anyway, I still find that they're enjoyable to watch, even though, I may not be completely happy with the way I look. I still find it enjoyable because it made me feel really happy when I saw it. And that's what I feel like is very, very important, is just how you're making people feel is more important, so much more important than anything physical. Anything physical is going to just be your asset, honestly. So I would say that the traits about you, whether you like it or not, certain traits about you, certain features about the way you look, maybe the shape of your nose, maybe the shape of your eyes, whatever it is, I feel like they'll all become your asset and all become more positive. If that person feels good about you, they're going to love the way you look more. If anything, I feel like it's the other way around. We love names because of people a lot of times, not that we love the name and then we love the person because of the name. Often it's that we love the person, so we love the name. You just have to think of it that way. So a lot of times it has to do, the same thing goes with looks, that we love the person and then we love the looks a lot of times, rather than that we love the looks, therefore we love the person. I mean, a lot of times, yes, when we like someone by the way they look, it's a lot of times just very empty because there's no real connection there. Like, oh, you like the way the person looks, but it doesn't really mean too much to you anyway because it's just the looks. But when they've actually said something that like you feel like you can connect with, that's when the true connection comes. Yeah, I'm repeating myself with weird words like connection. But anyway, that's something that's really, I would love for you to keep in mind, is that a lot of times, like, we just want the connection rather than to just find someone else that looks good. So because of that, I truly don't believe that anyone should ever feel like they can't say something, they can't film their own videos, they can't start their own channel, they can't meet someone, or they can't do anything that they like just because of the way they look. I truly don't believe in that. If you are the person who think that you're not worthy because you're not good enough, I want you to really think about it like this. If you had a child that you cared a lot about say to you, I feel like I'm really ugly and I don't deserve any kind of love, what would you say to them? Like, I really want you to think about, if it was the person that's most important to you tell you, I'm so ugly that I feel like nobody will like me, I shouldn't even bother with anything. What are you going to say to them? It's probably not going to be something like, oh, just deal with it, you're ugly, like that. It's probably going to be something very encouraging, right? You have to think of yourself in that kind of third person way sometimes. That's the only way to do it, especially when you have this direct, like, negative self-image. You have to talk to yourself like you're another person. So I like to always imagine another person being someone that's very, very special to me. And it could be someone, it could be anyone that just matters a lot to you. And sometimes imagining them as your own child is like the most effective, because I would hope that nobody would ever say to their child, oh, you're too ugly to do this, do that. I really hope not. Like, I hope that's not something that people do. But what I mean is, when you're thinking about what would you say to that person who was saying that, then you got to actually take what you're saying to that person and then give it that advice to yourself. I know, it's like, for some reason, we don't take our own advice easily. I know that. I understand that, and one way I try to combat that is just repetition. That's the only real way, is because I always think that when you're young, a lot of times, you form connections. Experiences make you form certain connections. So you're going to be thinking like, oh, I'm so ugly. And it's going to be repeated so many times that your mind has formed that connection. Is like automatic, I'm so ugly. And it actually, I feel like it will take a lot of time and effort to undo that. And the only way you can really do that is by repetitively telling yourself otherwise. And sometimes even finding someone on the internet that could be speaking very positively about self-image, that could really help. So sometimes it's very useful for me to play something like that every day, like to hear that someone talk, even if they're saying the same thing every single day. You're finding like a different kind of content, but they're saying almost the same thing. It will work. You need to drill it in your head, literally, like not literally, like you have to drill it in your head because that is that important. You're not going to change your mind overnight. Of course, it's not going to be that easy. It may just all take years. It could take years for you to get to anywhere that you want to be. So I absolutely do understand that it could take a long time, and it's not something that you can just think away, and it's not something you can just instantly overnight get rid of. Like when you live with these negative self-image, like it's not something that can go away easily because it's so ingrained in your head that it almost feels automatic. Like it's really, really terrible in some ways that that's how our mind work. But I've experienced that. It's like you have to actually take the time and effort and a lot of time to repeat constantly in your head to form a new connection. And that is that you're not like, you're not ugly. You don't have to worry about these kind of things. It doesn't matter. Like what you have to say is so important. Don't worry about the ugly thing because people probably not thinking that, and everyone has different ideas of what's ugly or what's not. So this person might find that trait really unattractive, while other people might find it attractive depending on their circumstance, but depending on who they met in their life. Everything could contribute to how someone feels about you. So just tell your story. That's the most important thing, is to share your story. Just tell your story, because what you have to say is so important, because there are some things about you, about your life, that could be so relatable to someone else that it could just change their life. And imagine how good that will feel, how good it is for you to discover something that changed your life. You could be doing that for someone else. So don't think that you don't have enough good things to say, or that you're not as important. And whatever it is that makes you feel like you should just give up, please just know that what you have to say is as important as anyone else. It's as important as the biggest creator on earth. I do truly believe that. I don't think that anyone should be like better than anyone else. Like everyone is equal, that we shouldn't feel like, oh, this person's too good, therefore I suck. Like, no, please don't think that. I just want you to think that you can do the same thing. You can achieve the same thing. You don't have to be the best looking to do that. You really don't. You just have to tell your story, be you, and, you know, I truly do believe that. So, yeah. Hopefully that will somehow get you, maybe, even if it's for 2 seconds, for you to feel less ugly. Then I've done my job. That's all I really want to do, is to but help anyone who felt like that you're not worthy enough to not feel that way. Even if it's just for the time being while I'm speaking, that's good enough for me. And maybe what will help you is to just repeat what I'm saying like 300 times a year, you know. That'd be like every day almost. So, you know, maybe you need to repeat this conversation. Maybe you need to repeat so your mind can like actually form the new connection. Who knows? So whatever works for you, I suggest try it, because it's just so important. I just don't want you to waste time away feeling like you're not as good as others when you're just as good or capable or equally, you know, just everything about you is equally as important as another person. So I truly don't want you to feel otherwise. And I know sometimes what you experience and what people have told you in your life could just be so horrible that you truly believe it. And unfortunately, that's a problem that a lot of people like myself face, that what you're told, especially when you're a child, like sticks with you. It just stays there, and it's very, very hard to get rid of. And I want to encourage you to challenge that all the time, even if you have to play the same podcast 300 days in a row. You know, it's like just continue working on it. Please, you have to promise me that you're not going to give up on yourself, because it really means a lot to me. I just don't want to feel like there's anybody in the world that thinks that they can't do something because they're too unattractive or ugly or whatever it is, that like because of that their story doesn't matter. I don't want you to think that. What I'm really curious about is, what are some reasons why you might feel ugly, or like what do you think caused it? Because that's something I'm very curious about. Because for me, I personally have just said that for me it was because of my biological father. He was just not a nice person, so I automatically associate anything to do with him, with ugliness. And that's my reasoning, but I know other people have different reasons. So if you do struggle with it, please share with me like what causes it. And if you were to convince someone else, like someone who's very, very close to you, very dear to you, I want you to think about, if you're trying to convince someone that you care about that they're not ugly, what would you say? And then I want you to try to say this to yourself every single day, because I truly do believe that will help. So anyway, thank you so much for watching and listening to another podcast. If you have any suggestions for what you want me to talk about, if you want to be a guest or anything like that, please contact me. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon.